Hello everybody, Claudia Boleyn here, and today I'm going to do a soft spoken video, and it's on the topic of Game of Thrones, which I know is a very popular TV show and book series. It was either Game of Thrones or Doctor Who, and I felt in the Game of Thrones mood. I should say before I begin, I have read the books, but I read them quite a long time ago now, so I'm not an expert on the Game of Thrones universe. I watched the TV show, and I love the TV show, and like I said, I have read the books, but if I make any mistakes here, then forgive me. It is a lot to remember. There's a lot to remember in the Game of Thrones universe. Okay, so what I thought I might try and do is I'm going to read you a few segments from a book that I have about Game of Thrones, and hopefully that means that you will hear some page flipping noises and paper noises, and I'm probably going to do some tapping. For me personally, I have never got tingles from tapping, but some people do, so the tapping is for you, my friends. Okay. Oh, the microphone, you can actually see it. It's there. I'm in a very, very strange arrangement right now. If you could see the full image of this room, it's a mess. Because all the equipment's out, and I'm sitting on my makeup box with a cushion on it in a very awkward position, and I have a table and the microphone is balanced on that, so I hope the sound's okay. I have done a few tests, but again, any constructive criticism in terms of sound is very welcome, because I'm new to this, so it's very welcome. Don't worry about offending me. I'd love to hear if you have any ideas about how I can improve my sound. Okay, so the book that I'm going to read you little snippets from is this one. So this book is called Game of Thrones, The Noble Houses of Westeros, Seasons 1 to 5. And I got this from a little bookshop called The Works, which sells discount books. And obviously it appealed to me because I love Game of Thrones, but also because I just like the design of this book, and I find it aesthetically pleasing, with all of the different house sigils in gold embossed on the front. And I'm the sort of person who will buy a book if it looks nice. I'm that sort of book buyer. Okay, so the setup we've got today means that you won't be able to see the pages properly as I read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a bit and possibly show you a bit. We'll just see what works, because this is quite new for me still. Okay, so I absolutely love the smell of new books. I have always done that weird thing where when I get a new book, I sit there and sniff it for ages, and I know lots of people do that, but I don't know why it's so relaxing to me. It just is. Okay, so I'm going to skip past the map of Westeros and Essos, and I'm going to go straight to the houses and the families, because that's what interests me about Game of Thrones the most, because it reminds me of British, very early medieval history, and I think a lot of the themes and the characters are sort of borrowed from that. So let's start with most people's favourite house, House Stark. Winter is coming. Shall I read this in a northern accent? Because it's House Stark. Let's go for it. Okay. Winterfell was the seat of the Stark family for generations, until one-time Stark ward Theon Greyjoy seized the castle for his father during the War of the Five Kings. Roose Bolton's bastard son Ramsay Snow took it on from the Greyjoys, but left it in ruins. Tywin Lannister awarded the castle to Lord Bolton after the Red Wedding for his services to the crown. Did you like my northern accent? You know, I should really be in Emmerdale. I could do Emmerdale. Okay. Let's read you a little bit about the history of House Stark. Okay. I'm going to do this one in northern again. Apologies to any northern listeners. The leading house of the north, the Starks reigned as kings in the north until the Targaryen conquest, after which they served as the region's warden for nearly 300 years. Following the execution of his father, Robb Stark severed ties with King's Landing and declared himself king in the north. That bid for independence came to a violent halt when Walder Frey and Roose Bolton murdered Robb and Catelyn Stark at a massacre known as the Red Wedding. In an alliance arranged by Lord Peter Baelish, Sansa Stark returned to Winterfell and married Ramsay Bolton. Okay, so the Stark family tree. Let's see if I can hold this up while we go. You won't be able to see it that well, but you'll get an impression of what I'm saying. Okay. So it all began with Rickard Stark. And Rickard Stark had 4 children. He had Brandon Stark, Eddard Stark, otherwise known as Ned, Lyanna Stark, and Benjen Stark. Out of these 4 children, only one of them ended up getting married and having children. And that was Ed. Now, Ed, Eddard, Ned, Neddy, many names for Ned. Ed, why do I keep calling him Ed? Now, Ned and Catelyn had Robb Stark, Sansa Stark, Arya Stark, Bran Stark, Rickon Stark, and Jon Snow. Technically. Well, let's just say that, Jon isn't Catelyn's son, is what I'll say. I'm sure if you've seen the TV show, I don't need to go into this, but just in case you're catching up, I won't go further. Okay. So, Robb Stark married Talisa Stark, who is played by Una Chapman, and just a little bit of personal input from me. Out of all the actresses I can think of in the whole world, I think that Una Chapman would play the best Anne Boleyn. I would love for her to play Anne Boleyn. Let's talk about the kids a little bit. So, Robb Stark, the eldest, he's pretty headstrong, very handsome. Yeah, he's a bit fiery and not necessarily the Stark that I would trust with leadership, just from my opinion. Controversial. Okay, so then you've got Sansa Stark, who is the eldest girl, and Sansa is probably my joint favourite character in the Game of Thrones universe. Here she is. Now, a lot of people don't like Sansa very much, because they say that she's whiny and that kind of thing, and she made the mistake with Joffrey, but we all make mistakes when we're teenagers. And I think that she's turned into a political titan. I think she's learning from everything she's seeing, and I think she is existing very cleverly, and she has been existing very cleverly in a very dangerous situation for a very long time. And I think, looking at medieval history itself, you know, the real British medieval history, I think that it's a lot harder than people would realise to keep back your real feelings and to live that lie. and to keep yourself alive, and Sansa has actually been incredibly bright by doing that. So whether you're a Sansa fan or not, you have to admire her courage for keeping this up and her dedication. Okay, so then we have Arya Stark. Now, Arya Stark is somebody who just, well, according to my viewers, apparently I look a little bit like Maisie Williams, which is a very nice compliment, by the way, thank you. But I don't think I shall be cosplaying as Arya anytime soon, because I would not be able to pull it off at all. But Arya is kind of bloodthirsty. She's a murderer. Lovely topics for an ASMR video. Let's all relax and think about murder. But I think she's been formed by her experiences in a different way to Sansa. They're both survivors, and they're both, in my opinion, very strong female characters. They show different ways of dealing with that trauma, I think. And Arya and Sansa both have revenge in their hearts, and I think they're both very proud, and they feel a lot of family loyalty. But they have different ways of going about things, and I always think about it like this, that if Arya had remained in King's Landing, I don't think she would have been able to hold in her feelings the way Sansa would. So I don't think Arya would have got this far, personally. I don't think she's got that same ability as Sansa, or she didn't at the time. And equally, I think had Sansa taken Arya's path, she wouldn't have existed, she wouldn't have managed to survive either. So I think they both display how they've used their strengths very cleverly in order to exist, and I can't wait for the sisters to be reunited because I love them very much. Okay, so let's move on to Bran Stark. I don't want to get too spoilery with Bran, but let's just say that I know this is an ASMR video, but you know, if you watch Game of Thrones, then we've got to get a bit dark here. So poor little Bran was climbing a tower one day, and he just so happened to catch a pair of lovers that really shouldn't be lovers in a tower, and he ended up getting pushed out of the tower. And yes, it didn't go very well for him. He lost the use of his legs, and poor little Bran had to give up his dream of being a knight. So life's been very difficult for Bran. Bran is very intelligent. I think that Bran would make a very good leader. His story actually reminds me a little bit of the story of King Arthur. I feel like out of all the Starks, he's not my favourite, but I would trust him in a leadership role, shall we say. He thinks things through. He's bright, and he's kind, and he's responsible. I really like Bran. Yes, some of his scenes in the show have been a little bit boring, but that's not Bran's fault. I like Bran. Well, last of all, of the official Stark kids, we have little Rickon. We don't know much about Rickon. I don't recall much Rickon in the books, to be honest. I remember thinking he was a bit like young Rob, or how I'd imagine young Rob to be. Quite fierce, headstrong, like quite boisterous. I don't know where they're going with... Oh, I just remembered something. Let's not talk about Rickon Stark in the show, shall we? Let's move on. Alright, so let's move on to Jon Snow. Everyone's favourite Jon Snow. You love Jon Snow. I love Jon Snow. Everyone loves Jon Snow. Yeah, what can I say about Jon Snow? He is sort of the emo of the pack. He's the black sheep of the family. He is the one we all root for. He has a face that looks like he's permanently confused, in a very cute and attractive way. He has some lovely black curly hair going on. He's really nice. I really like Jon Snow. I would trust him with leadership as well. I love the fact that he's now working with Sansa. He's reunited with Sansa in the show. Spoiler alert, but not really, it's not a big one. I think they make a good team. I think that there are some... I can see the struggle that's coming in with those two. And I think it's because a lot of people are blaming Sansa for this, and they're saying that she should trust Jon more, but I think people forget the life that Sansa's been living all this time. She's very hesitant to trust anybody, and I think she's learned from the people she's been around that you have to keep things very private because other people can let you down, and that can cost you your life. So I feel like if the trust builds between them, it could work. If not, I'm not sure, but please don't take it out on Sansa. Think about the life she's lived, people. That's understandable to me. And I just love Jon as a brother to Sansa because he really looks out for her, and they didn't have a good relationship to begin with. Sansa was pretty mean to Jon, and he's forgiven her like the lovely, sweet person he is. So, yeah, I love those two. Honourable mentions to the household? Well, let's mention some of the household. Let's go for Maester Luwin, Roderick Cassel, Hodor, Osha, Brienne Tarth. It says Brienne Tarth here, but it's Brienne of Tarth. Jojen Reed and Mira Reed. Yeah, I like a lot of these characters. I love Maester Luwin a lot. I loved him. This is the case with so many characters from Game of Thrones that you're like, oh, I love that character. Oh, wait a second. No, I loved that character. And now they're gone. Yeah, Hodor. Yeah, this is bringing me terribly sad memories for pretty much all of these people. But we still have Brienne of Tarth, people. We have Brienne of Tarth, who is the knight of my dreams. And I tell you, if I was in the Game of Thrones universe, I would want her on my side. I would want her to ride up on her horse and her lovely armour and rescue me from distress. I could be a damsel. She could save me. Okay, so we've done House Stark and we've spent a very long time on them, so let's move on. Okie dokie. I'm just going past descriptions of the various characters. Oh look, here's Arya. I'm just going to show you a picture of Arya here. See, look, I don't think you can see this very well because of the light. But yeah, I can see the resemblance. I can definitely see the resemblance between me and Arya. Okay, let's see, who's next? There's some costume pages here, but I can't really show you the pages properly. Okay, here's my joint favourite house coming up. Boo hiss everybody. It's House Lannister. I do love me some House Lannister. I should say here that my joint favourite character in Game of Thrones is Cersei Lannister. I know. Controversial. I will explain later on. So let's talk a little bit about House Lannister. So, their seat is Casterly Rock. Legend has it that Lan the Clever tricked the Casterly family into giving up their castle, thus beginning the Lannister bloodline. The fortress guards a region once rife with gold mines, the source of the Lannisters' significant wealth. Let's talk about Lannister history. The wealthiest family in Westeros, the Lannisters of Casterly Rock, ruled as kings in their realm until the Targaryen dragons conquered the continent. Cersei Lannister's marriage to King Robert Baratheon brought the family to King's Landing, and her son Joffrey's ascendance to the Iron Throne solidified their power. The Lannister family tree. Right, let's ooh, that sounds nice. Maybe I am getting into tapping. Sounds really relaxing. Okay. So at the top here we have Tywin Lannister and his brother Kevan Lannister. Now Tywin married Joanna Lannister, who we don't get to see in the show, but I have an interest in Joanna Lannister and the relationship between Tywin and Joanna. In the books it's pretty clear that Tywin really loved her and that she was a very good and positive force in his life and a positive force for the whole family. And when she died, it sort of destabilised them. Tywin became even more cold and hard and unforgiving, and it's kind of made him that sort of ruthless character he is now, which is just very sad to me. So, the children of Joanna and Tywin are Cersei Lannister, my lioness, Jaime Lannister, and Tyrion Lannister. Right, so let's begin with Cersei, who is the eldest of the Lannister children, only by a very tiny bit because she and Jaime are twins. Now, Cersei Lannister, when I say she's one of my favourite characters, that doesn't mean that I like her or approve of her actions. It means that I find her fascinating. I have a lot of pity for her. She really fascinates me, and I feel deeply sad for her, and at the same time I feel upset that she's gone down the path she has. In many ways, she had a similar experience to Sansa, where she was married unhappily, young, and the power went to the men around her, even though I think with Cersei she feels very robbed by the society of Westeros. She feels like she's the most intelligent Lannister child, and as the eldest, she should be given more responsibility and power. And me being the feminist that I am, yes, I feel like I don't approve of monarchy or this system at all. But yes, technically, I think that, yeah, why shouldn't the girl rule if she's oldest? Anyway, that's not the way it works. And actually, looking at it, I think probably out of the three of them, Tyrion makes the best leader, actually. But I can see why Cersei was frustrated by that. And the thing with her that fascinates me and why she and Sansa are my favourites is that I think they represent different ways of dealing with what happened to them, where Cersei has become part of the system herself. So Cersei has learned to become very cold and very hard and ruthless. She's unforgiving because the system and the people around her were unforgiving to her. She's become, she's done some pretty dreadful, unforgivable things. I think her only redeeming quality is, her love for her children, which is an interesting mix with her, I find. And what I love about Sansa is that I feel like Sansa is retaining her humanity and her sense of being a good person, and her morals, even though she's been through a situation arguably worse than Cersei's. So they fascinate me in the same way that Arya and Sansa do, because they're characters which have gone in very, very different directions but come from a similar point. So anyway, yeah, Cersei. She's married to Robert Baratheon. Robert Baratheon reminds me a little bit in the show of sort of like a comedy version of Henry VIII, sort of. Now, her twin, Cersei's twin, is Jaime Lannister. Jaime Lannister is another controversial figure. Does he have more redeeming qualities than Cersei? Yes, I think he does. But then again, I think it's easier for him in his position to have those redeeming qualities. But Jaime, I like Jaime. I like the way he is when he's with Brienne of Tarth. I think that brings out a good side of him. I think that all the Lannister children have got some serious issues going on because of their upbringing and because of the family they're in. We know that the Lannisters were brought up very tight-knit and to only trust each other, to the extent that, things started to get a little bit dark between a couple of the Lannister children. But I do like Jaime. I think he's a good character. In the show, I think that he's mostly portrayed well. There are a couple of scenes which I think don't really represent him the way he is, or the way he should be in the books. But yeah, I won't talk about that here. And now we have Tyrion. Tyrion Lannister, who actually, in the books, Tyrion is a lot less likeable than he is in the show. In the show, they've made him a more sympathetic character, and he does less terrible things. Game of Thrones is a show where everyone seems to do terrible things, so, he has done some bad things, but in comparison to others, he's a nice guy. I don't know, actually. Did I just call him a nice guy? I think I did. Anyway, it's complicated, but Tyrion is fascinating because he and Cersei, they are both, in a way, they both suffer from the prejudices of society, because Tyrion is a dwarf and, you know, society treats him really badly because of that. And I think that's the cause of a lot of his negative character traits, you know, having to... I think people discount that a lot, how incredibly difficult it is for Tyrion to exist in this Westeros society. And it's such a shame that he and Cersei couldn't bond over that, and that it went horribly wrong. And it's probably Cersei's fault because of the whole thing with her mum dying. But I enjoy Tyrion in the show a lot. I'm so over the moon that he has met with Dany and that he has scenes with Varys, because Varys is one of my favourite Game of Thrones characters. Show Varys, I should say. I love him. I love every scene he's in. I don't trust him, but at the same time, I trust him more than I trust Littlefinger, so... yeah, desperate times and all. Okay, so the kids. Let's go through the kids quickly. We've got Cersei and Robert's children. They're not Cersei and Robert's children. We all know who's the real dad. Okay. So, we have Joffrey Baratheon. Joffrey, oh my lord. Do you know what? I'm just gonna say that Joffrey is pure evil. Everyone hates Joffrey, but everyone loves to hate Joffrey, which is why he's a good villain. Okay, then we have Myrcella Baratheon. I liked Myrcella a lot, and I think that I love characters like Myrcella who retain their goodness and their kindness. And yes, it is a lot easier for Myrcella to do this, considering the privileged position she is in, you know, being one of the gentry, being a Lannister. But I do think that I respect that kindness, and I think maybe that comes from her dad, who isn't Robert. Right, so, and then we have Tommen Baratheon. Little Tommen, poor little Tommen. Tommen is a bit weak as a ruler. I'm sure he'd make a lovely friend, but in the monarchy battle society they live in, I don't think that Tommen is going to cut it. Yeah, I don't know how far you are, but anyway, let's just skip over Tommen, shall we? Here it says, we got some marriage going on here. So we got Tommen marrying my girl Marjorie. Oh yes. Now, Marjorie in the books is actually younger than she is in the show, so it seems a bit weird and creepy in the show because Marjorie's much older than Tommen, but in the books she's young. She's only about 16 years old, so it's not so bad. And also, I mean, this is set on, it's kind of, I know it's fantasy, but it's based sort of on, you know, medieval history, and back then, you know, you could get married really young, so that's kind of where that's come from, I think. But anyway, Marjorie Tyrell, House Tyrell is my house, I should say, by the way. I am a proud Tyrell, growing strong over here. Yeah, Marjorie is a much more fleshed out character in the TV show than she is in the books. In the books, it's difficult to get a sense of why she does what she does. She's described as having a very sweet smile, but being quite clever. Whereas in the show, wow, she's like a slithering Kate Middleton, really, isn't she? Yeah, and I mean that in a very fond way, my Slytherins out there. Okay, so let's move on. Do we have any honourable mentions? We have Bronn, and I'm going to mention Bronn for the simple fact that I have the hugest crush on Jerome Flynn, who plays Bronn in the TV show, and he's like 50-something, but I don't care. Okay, let's move on. I'm not going through all the families here, by the way, because otherwise this video will take forever. But I think we can fit in... here we go. Right. I think this video wouldn't be complete without House Targaryen. House Targaryen are a fascinating house. Now, fire and blood is their motto. I forgot to read that out. Fire and blood. Their seat, well, they've got their current seat here at the moment. So their seat is Meereen, formerly Dragonstone. The greatest city in Slaver's Bay, Meereen boasted a thriving slave trade until the arrival of Daenerys Targaryen. Dany incited a slave rebellion and took the city with the backing of her army of Unsullied. Her rule was challenged by the Sons of the Harpy, who nearly assassinated Dany before she fled to Meereen riding Drogon. Tyrion Lannister manages the city in her absence, with vital assistance from Missandei and Grey Worm. The history of the Targaryens. The Targaryens came from the ancient civilization of Valyria, bringing dragons from the eastern continent and settling on the island of Dragonstone. After a mysterious disaster known as the Doom of Valyria wiped out their homeland and killed most of the world's dragons, the Targaryens invaded Westeros. A rebellion eliminated most of the royal family and cost them the kingdom, but from her exile in Essos, Daenerys Targaryen strives to reclaim her place on the Iron Throne. So let's look at this complicated family tree. So here we have Aemon Targaryen, Aerys Targaryen II, and Rhaella Targaryen. Now, in the Targaryen family, they marry each other, which is also something that the Egyptian pharaohs used to do. I think that's where the idea probably came from for the books. But, oh, look at that lovely picture of Dany. I love Dany. She looks, you can't really see that, can you? She looks beautiful and fearsome. I love that mix. She's like absolutely stunning and wonderful, but at the same time, she could absolutely kill you. How attractive. Right, so let's go for the kids of Aerys and Rhaella. So here we have Rhaegar Targaryen, Viserys Targaryen, and Daenerys Targaryen. Now, Rhaegar Targaryen died before the events of the TV show. I can't talk too much about him because it gets us into spoilery territory, but let's just say he's the big brother. So then we have Viserys Targaryen, the middle child, and when he and Dany fled after Robert Baratheon took the throne, he sort of took charge of Dany and is basically a cruel and sadistic person who nobody likes, but is, again, you know, very attractive. They have some good genes, the Targaryens, they really do. So then we have Daenerys Targaryen. I know that it's supposed to be Dany, but it's Daenerys. I want to call her Dany because it's Daenerys. So Daenerys Targaryen is the one that everyone seems to think is going to end up on the Iron Throne. She says it's her birthright. I mean, technically, considering that the Targaryens came over and conquered Westeros, it's not really her birthright, really, is it? Because if you think about it, if Robert conquered Westeros from the Targaryens, then by that logic, well, I guess to her it's the person who conquers it, gets it, which is a very dangerous way to think. But again, very British medieval kind of thing. I often draw parallels with Dany and the story of Henry Tudor. That's Henry VII, who became king. He was from a family, he had royal blood, he had noble blood, but he was quite far out in the succession because the Plantagenets had, they were in power. I'll probably make a history video at some point because I love talking about this kind of stuff. And Henry Tudor came from across the sea, and he brought his armies, and he fought Richard III, and he won. And it's because of him that we have the Tudor dynasty, or we had the Tudor dynasty. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Daenerys, that character, and I can't help but think that that's maybe where some of the inspiration came from for her character. What do we have here? Under Daenerys it says her children are her dragons, which, you know, okay, fair enough. She's got Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion. All of which scare me. My headphone's about to come out of my ear. Can you see that? It's back in, we're safe. They were very cute when they were younger, but there is no way I would want a dragon. No way. So, her advisors and supporters, who do we have here? Now, what's interesting to me is that Varys is not on this list. Maybe this book is just wait, it's series 1 to 5, isn't it? Oh, okay, maybe that's why. But let's talk about Missandei, who in the books is actually a lot younger and has this really sweet relationship with Dany. Dany sort of like takes her in and looks after her, and she's loyal and really young, but I can understand why they've aged her up for the show. Grey Worm, he was a member of the Unsullied. Good for him. Good for Grey Worm. I'm so happy for him. Who else do we have? Daario Naharis. Now, Daario. The first Daario in the show was not my cup of tea. He just annoyed me a lot. But the second Daario, I can see where the attraction is between Dany and Daario. In the books, I think, didn't he have a blue beard? I'm pretty sure that I remember him having a blue beard in the books. He doesn't seem to have that in the show. Maybe, I don't know why. Could they not afford blue hair dye? I'm not sure about that. Maybe it looked too sort of like modern and cool. I don't know, but I would have liked to see him with the blue beard. There's still time to give him a blue beard. Who else do we have here? Tyrion Lannister, who we've spoken about before, and Jorah Mormont, who is permanently in the friend zone. Jorah of the friend zone. No, Jorah, is very different in the books. I mean, he's pretty attractive in the show. I mean, a lot of these actors in Game of Thrones are, I just have to say that. But actually it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit weird. She's very young, she's young, and in the books I think she's even younger than, she looks older than she is here in the TV show. It's all a bit weird, but anyway. Or Jorah Mormont. Okay. So, what do we have time for? Now, I was going to read you House Baratheon, but do you know what? I'll give you the main people in House Baratheon. Here's the House Baratheon, Stannis Baratheon branch. That sounds like a fashion label, like his label. They have a very, very attractive sigil of a burning heart with like a deer or a doe or a stag. It's a stag. In it, and their house motto is, "Ours is the fury." He's an angry soul, is Stannis. So, I'm not going to read all their history and things like that. I'm going to go for the family tree. So, Stannis Baratheon, otherwise known to fans as Stannis the Manus, or he was Stannis the Manus until he did something very silly, which doesn't happen in the books, although I'm informed that it will happen in a future book. I didn't see it coming, and he can no longer be Stannis the Manus to me, I'm afraid, after that. So you got Stannis and you got Renly. Renly delivered, I think, the best line of the whole show when they were talking about, being born amidst salt and smoke. And Renly was like, is he a ham? I love Renly. Renly and Robert, to me, they make me think of Henry VIII, and they make me think of the two different points in his life. So Renly is like young Henry VIII, when he was young and virile and adventurous and funny and charismatic. People liked him a lot. And then Robert's when he becomes a bit of a tyrant and a drunk, and he eats and he gets angry and he becomes quite terrifying. That's how I read them anyway. So, who else can we talk about here? Shireen Baratheon. What a lovely little sweetheart she is. Anyway, poor Shireen. I really like her relationship with Sir Davos. Let's talk about Davos, shall we? Sir Davos in the show is lovely. I love Sir Davos. I would trust him with my life. If only he could have just adopted Shireen and taken her far, far away. But I love Sir Davos, and I'm excited that, spoiler alert, he's now with the Jon Snow crew. If you just heard like a sort of like rumbling noise, I haven't eaten my lunch yet, so that, you might have just got a rumbling stomach noise. I'm not sure. Who else do we have here? Oh, of course, we got Melisandre. Yeah, Melisandre. when I first got into Game of Thrones, I used to confuse her name-wise with Missandei all the time. Melisandre is sort of a religious fanatic, and she's really into the Lord of Light, and she burns people. Yeah, she does. I guess that's how she gets her kicks. She's quite terrifying, and she thinks that she's looking for the prince that was promised. She's looking for this person that she thinks is going to be like the knight of the Lord of Light and like represent them. And she thinks that's Stannis, but she changes her mind. It's a pretty big mistake to make, Melisandre, but we all make mistakes in life, I guess. Who else do we have here? Oh, nobody we need to talk about. Oh, we've got Gendry here, played by Joe Dempsey. Gendry and Arya, I feel like would make a really good future couple. I say future couple because, you know, when they first met, like, she's pretty young. But I feel like when they're older, and I mean, like, when Arya's, like, this big assassin and, like, really powerful, and Gendry's back from wherever he went in that boat, disappeared off the face of the earth, I think they'd make a nice couple, personally. Okay, so, I don't know if there's any... Who else shall I show you? How odd. They've showed me... Oh, okay, right, because it's the Baratheons again. So they've got more Lannister stuff because those families are so sort of intertwined? I'm not sure. House Greyjoy. We do not sew. We cross-stitch. Yeah. House Greyjoy, I don't really recall them that much from the books. I do recall... Now... I'm pretty sure. Now, the thing that confused me is that in the books, you have a character called Asha, who is the character that is Yara in the TV show. I'm not sure why they changed that. Maybe because her name sounds like Osha. But, yeah, it's odd. I really like her character in the TV show, but, you know, I can't actually say that I remember them that much from the books. I remember Theon a lot. I remember Asha being quite badass and having short dark hair, you know, and leading her own like fleet kind of thing, and respect to her for that. So, do I need to read you about this? Well, their seat is Pike, and it says here, the ancient stronghold, which takes its name from the island it stands on, is situated on a scattering of huge stones in the sea, with bridges connecting its towers. Its rocky, moss-covered foundations prevent any ships from landing. Do we need the history of House Greyjoy? Not really. Okay, who do we have here? We have Balon Greyjoy and his wife and the only kids that matter, and that's Yara and Theon. Theon in the TV show has really got my heart because I just pity him so much after what I really pity him. I know he's not a good character. I know he's not a good character, but I think the interesting thing about Game of Thrones is that few of them are good characters, so it's very confusing as a viewer. And it's very challenging in a society where we like to paint people as good or bad. I think it's very challenging to see that there's good and bad on both sides, and that sometimes the bad ones do good things, and sometimes the good ones do bad things, and it's overall just really confusing. I think Theon's a really good representation of that and how confusing that can be as a viewer, and I think that's what's intended, and I enjoy that about the show a lot. So let's go for I couldn't end this video without this house. House Tyrell, growing strong. House Tyrell is my house. I have done numerous Game of Thrones quizzes. Every single time I get House Tyrell as my house. You know, which I'm happy about because I like flowers and, you know, I'm bi and it seems like they're cool with that over there. They're into politics. They're quite shrewd. The women are smart. You know, they're pretty clued in. So I like that very much. So, their seat is Highgarden. Once the seat of House Gardner, this keep fell into the hands of its steward, Harlan Tyrell, when he surrendered to the conqueror Aegon Targaryen. The Tyrells have served as principal house in the region ever since. The history. For centuries, the Tyrells served and occasionally intermarried with House Gardner, the ancient family of the King of the Reach. But after the Targaryen conquest eliminated the Gardners, the Tyrells bent the knee to the Iron Throne, and then rose to become principal house and warden of the South. They've since thrown their support with the Lannisters. I'm also from the South as well, I've just thought of that. I live in the UK, I live in Kent, which is in the south. And actually, I've just thought as well, Kent is known as the Garden of England, so, you know, it was meant to be. So, family tree, here we have Olenna Tyrell, water character. I love her so much. She's more than a match for Tywin Lannister. Some of their scenes they've been the most entertaining to watch for me. The sort of power play that goes on between them. So then she has, her kid is Mace Tyrell. He's a bit useless, poor Mace. And then Mace and Allery Tyrell have Marjorie and Loras. Now, I've spoken a bit about Marjorie already. I'm a fan of Marjorie, especially from the TV show. And also, I did have hopes that I just feel like Marjorie and Sansa would make a good couple. I'm just putting that out there. I think they would do very well as a couple. You know, they could be like the first like LGBT ruling couple. You know, they should do it. Well, I say they should do it. They should have done it before it was too late. But let's talk about Loras Tyrell. Poor Loras. Loras is in love with Renly Baratheon. That's the good young Henry VIII guy. And oh, it makes me sad because things didn't go well for Loras. And it must be hard being gay in Westeros. Loras is a knight and very brave and courageous, and it's making me sad to think about Loras. Like, let's not think about him. Okay, so I can see House Frey here, but you know, I don't want to mess around with Walder Frey. So let's skip House Frey. I'm looking for the Martells, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Come on, give me some Martells. House Aaron's here as well, but I don't really want to read about House Aaron particularly. Come on. House Tully. I've already kind of spoken a bit about House Stark, and I guess Catelyn's the most prominent Tully, and her brother Edmure. House Bolton. I think it's best we don't talk about House Bolton in this relaxing ASMR video, don't you? Come on, bring me them. Here we go. Right. House Martell. House Martell. Unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Home of one of the coolest characters of all time, Oberyn Martell. Just a little interesting personal fact for you as well. My brother is House Martell, so we are House Martell and House Tyrell. Yep. So cool, so cool. Right, so. Oh, lovely. Right, so. The seat for House Martell is Sunspear. Built largely of mud and straw, this southern city serves as the capital of Dawn. It is dominated primarily by the Spear Tower, a 150-foot structure with a pinnacle of shining steel. History. In the period of Aegon's conquest, Dawn resisted all of the Targaryen king's efforts to annex it into the Seven Kingdoms. A marriage alliance between a Targaryen king and a princess of Dawn finally brought the region under the rule of the Iron Throne. The death of Oberyn Martell in King's Landing has complicated the royal family's relationship with the Martells, who are fostering Princess Marcella. Yeah, that was a disturbing episode, is all I'll say, yeah. So, oh, look at this gorgeous, gorgeous picture of the sand snakes. So we've got, I'm just going to talk about the sand snakes here. So we've got Obara sand, Nymeria sand, and Tyene sand. Now, again, my stomach's going. Apologies if you can hear that, I'm so hungry. I don't recall, I remember in the books thinking, wow, I really want to see these realised on screen, like, looking forward to it a lot. It's been quite a while since I read the books. And then when they actually were put on screen, I was a little bit disappointed. Yeah, Ilaria Sand became sort of evil in the TV show. And Elia Martell, actually I can't really talk about Elia Martell without, Elia Martell was married to Rhaegar Targaryen, that's Dany's eldest brother, and she was married to him, and poor Elia died not very nicely, and she was supposed to be really kind and kind of not had the best health. She was quite frail, but she was supposed to be kind and gentle and, you know, just a generally good character. But we know what happens to good characters in Westeros. I'm a bit confused here because I'm pretty sure that we're missing a character here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're missing a character here. Oberyn's niece. Goodness me, I've forgotten her name. It's been such a long time since I read it, but what was her name? It's not Elia, it's Elia Ilaria. What's her name? I'm so sorry I've forgotten it for this. I've spoken about her before, but it's completely slipped my mind. There's just a lot of information to take in because it's Game of Thrones. But he has a niece. I'm pretty sure he has a niece. And yeah, here they've got Trystane Martell as Doran's son, and like the one who comes over, and you know he's the one that's supposed to come over to King's Landing and take a seat on the council. But in the books it's not like that, is it? I'm pretty sure that's not right. Gosh, I'm getting really confused. I should have looked this up before I did this, but now I'm going to have to look this up and see. I'm pretty sure he has a niece who wants revenge. I'm really sure he does. Maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me. I'm pretty sure he does. Anyway, so that's the end of our little journey into Westeros. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this quote here. Lannister, Baratheon, Stark, Tyrell. They're all just spokes on a wheel. This one's on top, then that one's on top, and on it spins, crushing those on the ground. Dany then declared she's going to break the wheel, but debatable how she's going to break the wheel by taking over Westeros, because I think the best thing to do would just be to turn it into a democracy, people. But, you know, to start with, they could put someone from each house on the council, and they could, like, debate stuff, and, you know, they could represent the people where they live. And then it could just gradually turn into a democracy. That's my dream. Don't think it's going to happen in Westeros, but anyway. Thank you so much for joining me for this ASMR video. I hope that it's been relaxing or interesting. I'm still very, very new to this, so constructive criticism is very helpful to me. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I will see you really soon. And if you want to, if you're still paying attention at this time, you know, you might be asleep or whatever, but tell me what your favourite house is, or which house is your house, because I'm intrigued by this. Are there any other Tyrells in the comment section? I would really like to know. Yeah. Okay, right, I love you loads. Let's put the book down. I'll see you really soon.